Right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stemmy Conversations podcast, where we talk about all things STEM and ICT. So I'm your host, Stephanie Simon, alongside with my co-host, Mr. Bradley Downer. And today we have a special guest. And with us today is none other than Dr. Nikita Greenidge. Greenridge. My apologies. So she is a Saint Lucian researcher and a founder of CariSurg, an initiative empowering the Caribbean students and professionals to lead in surgical robotics and artificial intelligence. It's pretty awesome. She is a research fellow in surgical robotics at the University of Leeds, where her work focuses on robotic endoscopy and micro ultrasound for early cancer detection. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Greenidge. It is an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Right. So, a little bit more through the CariSurg, Nikita has created opportunities for young researchers across the Caribbean to gain hands-on experience in surgical robotics, laying the foundation for locally developed healthcare technologies. So, let's get right into it. So it's a surgical robotics and what what can you tell us about that?
So, surgical robotics is a relatively new field, and it basically is at the intersection of, I guess, the surgical field and surgery, and you know, surgeons operating on patients to make them better, and robotics, which is quite a general field of integrating mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, in a sort of mechatronics. So you have mechatronics, you have the application to surgical technologies, and when you combine those two things, you get surgical robotics. And so the most, I guess, known form of surgical robotics is this Da Vinci robot. You have this robot that actually is used to assist surgeons with procedures, and that is probably the most famous surgical robot. But surgical robotics could really be anything at that intersection of surgery and robotics.
Okay, so it's pretty awesome when it comes to the healthcare set on the department. So now that I have a better idea as to what it is, what is a day in your life like in this career? Is it like extremely busy or is it a lot?
So it changes. So at the moment, I'm a research fellow at the University of Leeds. So that usually involves experiments. So a lot of what I do is research. So it's about coming up with new concepts, designing them, and making them, fabricating them, and then testing them. And so all of that is done in the lab. So some days I might be in the lab for the full day. Some days I might spend some time in, like, the office doing some CAD or some, software, and then going to the lab to test. And some days are completely just on my computer. I could be anywhere doing, more admin type things. So it really depends on what I'm working at the time, but definitely in the space of the university and research, it tends to be a combination of lab time, and then sort of programming or CAD um, time and meetings. Of course, everybody has meetings. Nobody can get away from meetings. So there's a good few meetings in that day usually.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that because for myself as well, I'm back to back within the meeting, so it has you it gets you on your feet.
Yeah.
So my next question to you, if you weren't into this particular field, what other field you would have chosen and why?
So, you know, when I was young, I really wanted to be a mechanic. I don't know if that's considered outside of the field or not, but I wanted to be a car mechanic. Um, and if I wasn't a car mechanic, maybe, so I used to play volleyball. And so at some point, I delusionally wanted to be a professional volleyball player. So I think those would be my two options.
Well, those are some awesome fields, especially with the sports. So that's cool. I think I would have been into fencing, but
Mhm.
I'm not fully into that part, so it's just on the side in case. Yeah. So you're saying that you're currently in the research aspect. So what are some of the requirements that we can tell the viewers out there if they want to pursue this line of work?
Requirements, I mean, so at the moment, in terms of doing research, research is quite specific in the sense that you usually need an undergraduate degree. You don't need to have anything um more than that. You don't need a master's at the point of entering research, but you would most likely, for most programs, require a bachelor's degree. And the bachelor's degree could be in anything. If it's surgical robotics, it could be in any engineering discipline. Obviously, if you do biomedical engineering or mechatronics or electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, you're particularly well suited, or you could do computer science. Um, there's a few degrees that would feed into it, but yeah, a degree in one of those fields would definitely put you in a good position to be able to have a career in research.
Okay, because I know that they have some persons out there, they're studying if they would need to, go straight to doing a master's because we know that the different fields of studies, it might require you
Mhm.
to go farther. So for those who
Yeah,
are listening out there,
for me, for example, I didn't do a master's. So I did a bachelor's degree in medical engineering, which was a subset of mechanical engineering on my course. And then I worked for 2 years and then I went straight into my PhD. So you don't need a master's to do a PhD, at least in the UK. Um, so that's always one of the options that I tell people is that you don't actually need a master's to be able to do a PhD. So, consider that when you're considering your options.
well, thank you so much for highlighting that part in particular, because I guess that that's a question out there that a lot of persons are asking in
Hmm.
in terms of a stepping stone, be it from the bachelor's, can I go to something else besides that area? Right. So I see that my co-host is back. Brad, do you have any questions that you would like to ask in this moment in time?
My question would be, can you say how has your career journey been? I mean, yeah, you would face challenges, but how has it been for you since you started?
So I guess I would have to first describe my career journey. So I did up to Cape in St. Lucia at our A-level college. So then, well, our community college. Um, and then I went to the University of Surrey to do a bachelor's degree in medical engineering, which was, as I said, considered mechanical engineering, like a subspecialty of that. And then I worked for 2 years as a mechanical design engineer. in London, and then I went straight into my PhD. So I applied to do my PhD. Um, and of course now I've since finished my PhD as of August this year. So I'm now a research fellow. So that's sort of the quick run through of like my career path. There are many different ways to get to this point. But that's the path that I took. Um, and so I would say in terms of challenges, as you say, there are always challenges. But I think in terms of tackling these challenges, the main thing is that, you know, you have to consider the fact that when things don't work out how you expect them to, if I had to plan out my path from when I was doing my CAPE examinations in solution, I probably wouldn't have planned out the path that I've currently taken. And so I think it's important to sort of stay flexible and to understand that probably the best thing is not the plan you had in mind. And so you have to be a bit patient when things don't work out, and you can, because at each of those steps, I initially wanted something else, and what I got was what I have now. And I'm really grateful that I have what I have now, and I'm grateful that, the what I initially wanted almost didn't work out, so that I could get the opportunities that I currently have. So, does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, I like the idea that you brought to that. Sometimes you might want something and then you get something else, and the something else is better than the one you wanted, yes.
Yes, yes. Yes, because as I said, once upon a time, I was very invested in my volleyball, and I thought I wanted to do I wanted to use volleyball to go to university. So I wanted to go to the States on a volleyball scholarship and all of that. Um, Evidently that did not work out. And as much as at the time I was probably devastated, um, I think it worked out for the best, and I ended up getting, I'm very happy with the route that I ended up taking. And so, as I say, at each step, it was sort of a question. My bachelor's, when I finished my bachelor's, the UK does this thing called integrated masters. So you can spend 3 years to do a bachelor's, or you can spend 4 years and then you graduate with a single degree, but it's a master's degree rather than a bachelor's degree, which is, yeah, I'm not sure if anywhere else does it like that, but the UK has that option. And when I was doing mine, I was kind of humming and hawing, should I do the Masters of Engineering, or should I just do the Bachelor's of Engineering? And I made I guess now then I would have called it a mistake. Now I guess I could call it a blessing, but I thought I wanted to do the bachelor's. So I initially applied for the bachelor's, and then halfway through I switched, and someone had convinced me you should do the master's. So I switched over to the master's, but then in the final year so my third year, which would have been the final year of my bachelor's year, I decided actually, no, this makes no sense, because if I do the master's of engineering, that's equivalent to if I did a bachelor's plus an MSc later, and I could work first and decide what I want and then come back to do a master's. I don't need to do it all in one go. And I told them, I want to leave basically. And they said, well, you can't just leave now because you've said you're going to do the master's. Um, and so I said, well, I want to leave, I don't want to do the 4 years. Um, and basically, the in the end, what ended up happening was, and the reason is because they structure the course differently. So if you do the masters, they change your final year project from your third year to your fourth year. So it meant that because I was already halfway through my third year, that the structure that my course had taken, I would no longer be able to graduate at the end of my third year. Um, but in the end, they said, well, you can leave, but you won't be able to get, um, like an official bachelor's of engineering. You would just get like a bachelor's of science in engineering or something like that. And I said, I'll take it. I'll take it. Give it to me. I need to move on to something else. Um, And so that's just an example of, I guess, one of the, because at the time it was very scary because, they were saying, well, if you have this degree, you won't be hireable because people are looking for, bachelors of engineering or whatever else. But sometimes you kind of have to, I guess, trust the process and trust yourself a bit to say what you want and what you don't want. And so, yeah, I think in terms of like my journey, that probably would have been one of the, I guess, most unsure points in me deciding, okay, let me leave. And then I just figured out how to get a job for a few years before I decided if I wanted to go back to do my PhD or master's or whatever it may be.
I like that. No matter what happens, know what you want and just trust the process. I like that. My next question would be, what does success look like for you? How do you know you're successful in your career? Is it money? Is it maybe having a positive impact? What does it look like for you?
So for me, I would definitely say impact is important to me. Um, and I know that especially now because when I worked for 2 years, I really enjoyed my job. Um, but I was working so I was a mechanical design engineer in a defense company, a defense startup, right? So they were building non-lethal solutions, which in the grand scheme of things is better than what it could have been for a defense company. But ultimately, it was still for use in war, basically. And I remember thinking, what's missing because I really enjoy the engineering part of the job. We were doing some really innovative stuff. Um, and every day it was like a challenge, and every day, it was all the things that I love about engineering, but there was just something missing. And I think I realized that unless I'm working towards something that has a positive impact that I connect with, um, I'm just not going to feel fulfilled in what I do. And so I think it was basically at that moment that I was very sure that whatever I do in the future needs to be something that has a positive impact. So definitely positive impact for me is the key to what I would consider is successful.
Thank you. I like that. Over to you, Stephanie.
All right. So given it's in the health sector, right? And it
Mhm.
involves surgical robotics and what's not. Um, I want you to explain to me, or if it has ever happened, what does imposter syndrome looks like for you?
Hmm. Um, a good question. I think, I think everybody has imposter syndrome to some degree or the other. And there are many ways that it manifests. But for me, in surgical robotics, sometimes it can be when we as engineers are talking to the clinicians, we're speaking to the surgeons, and the surgeons know so much that we don't. And we're trying to explain to them what our technology is trying to do, or how they should improve whatever they're doing, and they just um you can feel very insecure in that moment because they might just think that these people have no idea what we do on a daily basis. Because granted, what they do on a daily basis is incredible. Um, so that's definitely one form. And I think in the area of research, um, you often feel imposter syndrome because it's quite a wide hierarchical space. So you have PhD students, you have postdocs, you have researchers, you have um, lecturers, you have professors. There's like a whole range, and I think especially when you come from the Caribbean, we when you enter these spaces, there are not very many familiar faces or familiar accents or familiar, all of it is very new. So I think these thoughts always enter, but I think the reminder is always that, we 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 belong there, we are enough. And
Mhm.
if you can remind yourself of that, then um you can start to kind of push away those negative thoughts.
I like that response.
I love that
If
too.
I may add, I recently held a role where I was managing some delegates,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them, or if not all of them, some of them have PhDs. So on an educational level, I would say they're far advanced than I am since I'm doing my bachelor's.
Right.
Um, and you felt there were times when I felt like, do I really belong here? And then most of the other country leads were senior folks who were
Mm-hmm.
either parliamentarians,
Mm-hmm.
lecturers working these big people. I'm like, hmm, do I belong here? But it was like you said, you have to tell that you belong here.
Mm-hmm.
My friend from I think it was Turks and Caicos, she reminded me that we all belong here despite um where we're from or our academic backgrounds, we all belong here. So
Yeah.
yes, I enjoy that. Thank you so much for that
Yeah.
response.
No, definitely. And I think when it comes to that as well, it's easy to rank people based on education level, for example. Like you said, they were PhDs and whatever, but ultimately that doesn't, in the outside world and in the normal, unless you're specifically, applying for a job that requires a PhD, it doesn't mean anything regarding intelligence or anything else. So, it's kind of like just because someone has a PhD or just because someone has a master's or bachelor's or whatever, it's not really a marker of who's more intelligent than the other, or who belongs there and who doesn't. So I think it's important for us, not to get too swept up in these sort of
That's true.
titles or degrees or anything, or even seniority. I mean, you respect seniority based on an experience point of view and a respect point of view. But other than that, it's nothing to feel like inferior as a result.
Thank you. I like that. Um, my my last two questions actually. What advice would you give? I know you gave a lot of nuggets, but what advice would you give to a young professional or a young student who is looking for a degree in the part of maybe robotics or surgical
Mhm.
robotics? Or general in the STEM field, STEM and ICTs field.
Um, so I think the first thing is that it's always a good idea. I think now, if you're interested in anything to do with, as you say, STEM, ICT, robotics, engineering, I think it's you can't go wrong, basically, if you want to pursue it. So definitely do what you can to pursue it. And in terms of what you can do to pursue it, I would say speak to people because um I think we often are afraid of asking people for help or advice or whatever. And there are many people who you might know who might know somebody else who either is in the field or knows somebody who's in the field. And I think just have a conversation because that type of networking not only allows you to understand if it's something that's right for you, but also you put yourself in their minds and you also put the fact that you're looking to do that type of thing into the universe. And the universe starts to kind of align in a way that, they know, okay, this person is serious about pursuing a degree in computer science, for example. And people will start to say, oh, so and so wants to do computer science. You should speak to this other person, or I know somebody who did computer science and they studied at this place, they got this scholarship, or they got, people start if people know what you want, people can help you. But if they don't know what you want, they can't help you. So you really need to express your intentions and tell people what you want.
I like that. I'm somewhat like that. I dislike asking for help at times. However, a friend of mine told me closed mouths don't get fed. So she's
Mm-hmm.
like, if you want something, ask.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to the person to say either yes or no. Even if they can't, they can always point you in the direction of maybe, all right, I can do it, but maybe X and Y can. And they can connect you with that person. So
Exactly.
thank you so much for the advice. Is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation before we close?
Only that, as you say, to just encourage people to pursue their dreams. If you're interested in STEM, go for it. There's so much space. There's there's never the need for imposter syndrome, even especially before you even start pursuing it. If that's something you want to do, if you're even slightly interested in it, ask the questions, get involved, contact people, and yeah, start dreaming and start living those dreams.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
for our followers, be sure to follow us on social media. That is at Stemmy Conversations. That is on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, as well as Digital School Loud and the podcasting sites. Do have a great afternoon, Dr. Greenridge. Thank you again.
Thank you.